Welcome, everyone, to this town hall for the SMC Sangha and extended community. SMC has been touched by your outpouring of kindness and concern, and we are grateful for your presence today. Thank you for being here. Yesterday, our executive director, Michael Gayner, was able to visit the land for the first time since the fire. And in just a moment, I'll hand the mic over to him to provide an update and answer your questions. But first, a quick technical note about today's Zoom. I'm Kitty Kaler, the Online Programs Manager at SMC, and I'm here with two of my Shambhala Mountain Center colleagues, Travis and Kristen, to provide tech support. If you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to us in the chat box and we'll be happy to help. You can open the chat window by clicking the little chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. It looks like a little conversation bubble. On a mobile device, this is typically found in the 3 dots more button on the bottom right. The chat window is also how you can ask any questions that may come up for you today. Thank you to those of you who have sent questions in advance. Michael is going to do his best to address as many of those as possible, as well as questions that come through the chat today. While we may not be able to address all the questions, please know that anything submitted will be used to inform our future updates, and we welcome continued communications from you all. Thank you again for coming today. And without further ado, here is SMC's Executive Director, Michael Gayner.
Hello, everybody. And thank you, Kitty. And as Kitty said, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I also want to just, there may be a quiet voice beside me, our new Rusung Reed Miller. He's going to be helping me out with questions through this. So if you hear whispering or me looking to the side to answer to get questions, that's Reed poking me and saying there's something. Unless it's one of my cats poking me, who joined me in the evacuation. As Kitty was saying, I'm going to answer as many questions as I can. There's been an enormous number of questions, and there's a lot of complexities and a lot of things we simply don't know yet. We do welcome your feedback. And if folks feel that this means of communication is really useful, please do let us know along with your questions, and we can always hold more of these live Zooms in the future. The updates will continue coming out less frequently than during the peak of the danger to SMC, but they will still be coming out. There may be some which focus on specific things, some of the areas of complexity as they become clearer, or statements of understanding that express some of the things around ownership at SMC and the rest of it, that these things will take a more measured way to express in detail. And I do want to make sure that everything is crystal clear with all of you. There have been so many folks supporting us, so I just want to say a huge thank you. So much gratitude for all of the emotional support, all of the offers of volunteering, the funds that have been coming in, advice. There's so much support and love, and it's amazing. It's really, really powerful. Also an expression of gratitude to the SMC staff, who've been really stalwart in, moving through all of this and staying together as a community and sharing the challenges. And, basically what everybody says is they're just dying to get back up. They just long to get back up on the land and get to work and be in their homes. And so thank you to the SMC staff. And of course to the firefighters who've just done amazing work, just amazing heroic work. When we were up there yesterday, it was a bit of a quick visit because the fire danger is still there. We had about a little over 2 hours on the land and a lot of things to do. So we were kind of running around, and you know, there were firefighters there, probably about a dozen different fire vehicles still on the land doing work. There are a couple of places where there's still a little bit of smoke, so you know they've still got some work to do there. The Cameron Peak fire, while it's about 34 or 38, I'm not sure which one, % contained, and our area is contained, there's still hotspots in the fire, and there's, you know, it's not fully contained. And then there's the Mullen fire further north in Wyoming that's growing. So we're not out of the woods yet, so to speak, but it's a much more secure situation in that much of the route to SMC, the fire has gone through that. So those readily available fuels are already consumed, but there are still fuels available. Later today, we'll be getting out mostly some photographs, less words, more pictures, that we'll be sending out to the community. Those will be pictures of the various locations and of the land. The most powerful one was taken by, for me anyways, was taken by our manager of water, John Roop, and it showed the swath that stretched from the aspen grove below the stupa down just before you drive up the hill to the stupa. From that aspen grove, it survived, most of it, but just past that, all the way through to the Lake Shinyata and beyond, the fire just kind of cut through there. But already there's little green shoots, and it's only a week later, and these are like an inch or two tall. So there's, you know, nature is already starting to reclaim and rebuild, and it's just like a perfect metaphor and a perfect physical reality as well. So I'm just going to go through a few notes overall, and then I'll dive into the questions. So one question that's kind of overall is around the rebuilding of SMC, and things such as green energy standards, what we will rebuild, what will have the finances to rebuild, all of those kind of questions. And that's a huge area. SMC has had a director of master planning, Mac McGoldrick, for a few years now on staff. And one of the key things that he's been taking care of is a review of SMC's master plan with the county. So we're just about finished that. And there was nothing we could do in terms of any building or development until then. So on that level, the timing's good. You know, we feel very optimistic that this will go through. With the loss of buildings that we've had, we have a significant footprint that we can rebuild. Most of the old heritage staff housing is gone now. We lost that in the fire. So there's a clear need to provide housing for staff, for example, of one focus of rebuilding. So with the process complete with the county, we'll be able to actually think through very, very carefully of where we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. There is already initial work around a staff village. So what would be the stages towards that? To be really clear, Mac is a certified project planner and has done a lot of work around the standards that we would use to make sure that we're net zero carbon, using renewable energy, having very high standards of rebuilding that are a reflection of our environmental commitments. And more information will be shared with that as time goes on. And there's certainly a lot of work before that. So another question that's kind of central to this whole issue of rebuilding is around the finances of SMC. So just to really try to give the context, and if you have further questions, if anything isn't clear, please do send those questions in. And even if we don't get to them today, we're committed to being really, really crystal clear about what our situation is. So at the beginning of COVID, we staged into closure over different periods of time, and then eventually became clear we just have to close for the year and well into 2021. So our present plan is to reopen with a soft opening in May, but that's contingent upon the pandemic, and now it's contingent upon work that's necessary from the fire. So there's question marks about all that, but we're hoping to be able to do that. So when it became clear that we were closing for the full year and beyond, we were looking at about a $1.5 million shortfall for the year. So we went to work on that. Donors were incredibly helpful at that time. We accessed the PPP program, Paycheck Protection Plan. We cut back dramatically on expenses. So we were really careful with our money, and we shifted the projections to basically a break even for the year. So that took a fair bit of work. Then the fire obviously gutted, I don't know if it's obvious, but gutted that. Some of the little revenue streams that we were developing, some of the COVID safe programs, we had a few of those on the books. The retreat and residency program that we developed, similar to Carmicholing's. We couldn't bring more people in. We couldn't advertise for it until we knew what was going to happen with the fire. So our finances got a major hit from that. Then the fire came, that was with the fire. And then now that the fire's gone through SMC, there's questions around insurance. So the way it's working at SMC, insurance will not cover everything that was lost. There's a set dollar value per building, and it's not a full replacement amount. The expense, the premiums for institutions such as SMC, first of all, it's just getting really hard to get coverage in those kind of environments. Although we are able to get coverage and feel we will be able to continue, but it's expensive. So the coverage didn't cover, for example, some of the heritage staff housing. So that's just a question we still have to figure out. The insurance adjuster and a general contractor that works for them was with us on the trip to SMC yesterday. So we have a lot of work to do with them to find out questions around business interruption insurance, replacement, or the amount of insurance that will be given out for buildings that were lost, and then the costs of mitigation of smoke damage. That can be smell, that can be visual items as well, or visual aspects as well. So there's simply way too many variables to know exactly how the financial picture will work out. What I can say is that due to the generosity of the community and the direction in which the fundraising is going right now, that it's looking like we're going to be secure for the immediate middle term future. There's still some more work to do there before that's a given, but I'm optimistic about that. And quite honestly, SMC, in the 10 years that I've been living there, we've climbed a lot of hills, and some of them were really steep. But we've always made it over to the next valley and then the next hill. And I just know in my heart, in my bones, that that's what's going to happen here. Yeah, so more information will be forthcoming about that. There was a question around what was lost. The map that we sent out, that was accurate. Some additional assets, some additional buildings, at least some additional places that are holders of so much history. We lost the Dharmakaya cabin as well, which is one of the retreat cabins, as well as the Sambhogakaya cabin. But the Pramadita cabin, that was the lowest one behind the stupa, is still there. The Kami shrine is still there. The MPE kitchen and Torii Gate is still there. So that's all good news. One of the Maitri buildings was lost, and one of them is fully intact. The entire Red Feather campus looks to be fully intact. So that was amazing. I mean, the firefighters must have really just put in an incredible effort. And around many of the structures when we were there, you can see the footprint of the battle, so to speak, that the charred grasses often come very, very close to the edge of the building. And there's lines and those pumpkins around the buildings. So you can just see how hard they worked to save our land. There's a question.
What are the legacy staff buildings and what's the staff building?
Okay, so the legacy staff buildings are the buildings that our ancestors almost, many of them are still alive, but almost totems, you know, legendary people who came up to the land in the first few years. They built them around the land. So if you walked at SMC south down the road from Red Feather campus, for example, and looked up on your right, you'd pass the tent platforms and then you'd go past the Maitri buildings, and then you'd see these sort of really interesting shaped buildings like such as Virya, Avalokiteshvara. They're up on the hill. Dana, Sheila, after you pass through the Aspen Grove and start walking up the hill, on your right would be Sheila. On your left would be the house that Greg Smith has lived in for ages, Kashanti. All of those were lost to the fire. So the heritage, these older homes that were built, the ones that still stand, Manjushri up near Vajra Campground, Vajrapani. So Noel Smith lives in Manjushri. Vajrapani, that's Joshua Mulder's home. My home that Reggie Ray built some years ago, those are still there. Diana, we lost that in the fire. The trailer park was spared, so Gita down there and the domes are still there.
Main train tent is gone.
So in regard to platforms, we lost most of our tent platforms, including the main shrine tent platform. So, you know, this points to a lot of work that we have to do. And we've had so many volunteers, people saying, you know, when can I come up? When can I start working? And so that's a piece that I want to talk about, which is the general return to the land. So there are a number of elements to that. One is we need to sort out all of the safety issues. That's the primary thing. So one aspect of that is water. We need to have potable water, and we need to have wastewater capacity. We also need to have power. And then we need to have food and the capacity to cook that food. So our folks have done an initial analysis of that, and it's much better than we were afraid it would be. But we got to make sure that that's done right. So I don't want to say anything that I just don't know the answers to fully, but we're working on that. Just power alone, for example, in some cases you'd have power going through one building and then to another one. For example, Diana, we lost Diana, so we can't just flick on a switch and turn on the power until we're really sure that we've isolated the various dead ends, so to speak. So there's a bunch of work to do there still. So there's those issues. Then there's just figuring out all the finances and understanding what is it going to take to properly clean the homes and the spaces so that people can safely inhabit them. People are really eager to get back home, but we're not willing to take any chances on people's health. We need to know that those are safe environments in which people can sleep and eat and live and work and such. So that's stuff that we're going to have to figure out as it becomes clear what the actual timeline will be. And that's just for the staff to get back up. And the residency and retreat program folks who were with us through this, and, you know, we'll all be going up as one family, so to speak. The further work in terms of all of the volunteers I just can't speak to that right now. There's, even with the stupa, we had an art restoration specialist who flew in to join us on the trip. There's a lot of questions around what route through the restoration of art. Quite a few things were lost because we lost the stupa support building and the room in which art was made, the word for which I'm forgetting, sorry. We lost those. So a lot of things were lost in that, but some things may still be restorable. In the stupa itself, folks did a really amazing job of buttoning it up, but smoke gets in anyway. So there was some smoke in there. We need to work with professionals to make sure that we do everything really, really well. So we've taken the proper steps. You know, Anne Shaftal, who's in the Shambhala community and was really helpful in making sure that we really did things properly, so there's no initial mistakes. You know, that we had an expert there with us and the insurance person there when the door was first open, so we're not jeopardizing the restoration or the insurance money that would be needed to restore things. So a lot of decisions have to be made about what routes to go through that, and those have implications both financial as well as in terms of how long it'll take to make sure that things are properly cleaned, restored if possible, and then protected. So still a lot of questions around that. The same with visits to the land. You know, we've got these overlapping crises of COVID and of the fire, and both have safety issues. So we need to make sure that we can both do the work and ensure that people are able to be safe if they come and visit. So we're aware that, you know, we hold this incredible responsibility as the staff of SMC to let people come back and, you know, have the nurturing and the solace and the rejuvenation, you know, all of the various things that happen at SMC for folks. So as that becomes clearer, we'll share those kind of timelines as well. And the same goes for programs. There may be some programs that we can hold, but we need to make sure that it's completely safe when we do that. Some questions have come up around security. Right now, that whole area is buttoned down really tightly. We had gotten preliminary authorization to go up. We had to confirm it on the day. The amount of time that we thought we'd get up there was limited due to security issues, safety issues. Then we had to go through one very definite checkpoint with a police officer, and then another one. And then when we got to the land, there were the firefighters still there. The area is also patrolled by both firefighters and police. So it's pretty hard to get into right now, pretty safe. And no one would be allowed to stay up there. They were very clear. You need to go. You cannot stay here longer than the parameters that they laid out. As we clarify some of the questions, you know, it could be that an early stage of going up would be a few of the SMC folks, you know, perhaps some of the Kasong going up there, and, you know, if it's safe and there can be proper supplies, that they could camp there for a little bit. But we need to know that that's a limited amount of time and that it's totally safe. Okay, so I'm going to start going through, those are just preliminary comments. I'm going to start going through some of the questions, and there isn't a particular order. Again, there's at least over 100 questions just coming into this, and I'm sure there's a lot more that have come in. So I'm going to go through this. If something isn't responded to on this Zoom, know that we're not ignoring them, and we recognize the significance of those questions to everybody. How did it come that the stupa was not burned? Is it damaged in any way? So it wasn't burned because the folks that built it did an amazing job, and it's mostly concrete, and it's pretty much fireproof. It's also surrounded by layers of protection, you could say, and not only things like the concrete platform or the gravel pathway, but within the grasses around that, there are water supplies. And then it was also a high value asset from the firefighters' perspective. So even with nobody there, fire goes through, the stupa is not going to get burnt. So that said, there is smoke on the exterior, and we have to analyze how do we go about cleaning it in the best possible way. The fact that the gold leaf is actual gold leaf means that, for example, it's less susceptible, but it does need to be taken care of. Have you been able to assess anything salvageable, including stupa contents? So stupa contents are fine. They just need cleaning, which is a big deal still. But nothing in the stupa is damaged from fire or something like that. There's a question relevant to that? Okay. The Kami shrines, so I think all the questions are answered there. We will be posting photographs. It is there. It's also something that we are committed to rebuilding anyways. It's time for that to happen. It's been a struggle getting the resources to do that, but hopefully one of the things coming out of this will be being able to put into the timeline of overall rebuilding at SMC, including the Kami Shrine. The Maitri runes, we've answered that. So there's a question around the general condition of the charnel grounds. Does anything have to be moved from the charnel grounds? So the charnel grounds, for those who don't know what that is, it's an area that for many years sort of upslope towards Marpa Point from the stupa was a place that people would scatter the ashes of deceased loved ones. And they would put up little memorials and such there. Out of rocks and crystals and such. So the fire, I believe, did go through that area, but there's nothing we're going to do in terms of removing anything. That's sacred ground, and it's just going to be what it is. And nature will reclaim there. As I said, you know, there are already shoots coming up. The present approach that we're taking with the scattering of deceased loved ones' ashes is to circumambulate the stupa and spread the ashes in the green area between the gravel path and the raised platform. So we're simply going to continue. There's no changes in any of that. You know, we deeply respect the nature of the historic charnel grounds, and would never do anything there. Was the bridge to the stupa? It is intact. We will be sending a photograph of that out today as well. What is the extent of the smoke damage? Pretty much every building that we went into had some level of smoke smell. We understand that abatement for those kind of issues, it's not just leaving the windows open to air out, but what exactly it takes and how much money it will take, and the timeline on doing that. Those are things that we've just started to be able to look into. So we don't have a clear answer on that. As far as I know, the fiber optic cable that had boosted our Wi-Fi and internet signals by 7,000%, I don't know, some huge number. We managed to enjoy that for 2 days, I think, before the evacuation. and I believe it was not affected. And in fact, I'm pretty much positive that the route of the fiber optic onto the land is in areas that did not burn. And if it had burned, it would have been just grass fires, which, kind of sweep through and don't do as much. The heat doesn't penetrate so much. Windhorse Hill and Hyagriva, that are the properties sort of to the northwest at SMC, were untouched by the fire. They still remain standing. The same with the Azuchi range, the Kyudo range, that was untouched as well. For the bathhouses, Vajra bathhouse is lost, it's completely gone. Ratna bathhouse is still there. I think there's some other detail I'm forgetting, but basically of those two bathhouses, one is gone and one is there. And downtown, everything was saved.
Ratna bathhouse lost the stairs, that's it.
Yeah, apparently we lost the stairs at Ratna bathhouse. Maintenance shop is still there. And we'll have more information, but the water and the wastewater treatment facilities, the fire didn't get near the wastewater facility. And I don't believe it burned even the trace of the sewage, the collection system that we spent so much time putting in a couple of years ago. So those are all intact. And the fire did, I think, go near or just up to the reservoir for our potable water in the treatment plant, but there, my understanding is in good shape. And it's a question of ensuring that the wells, I think two of the wells might have a little bit of damage and need some work, and one of them is functioning. The reservoir itself is bone dry at this point, which would be from the usage by the firefighters. So, I'm so glad we could contribute. And it does provide us an opportunity to do a little work in there that we would never have gotten otherwise. So that's a little silver lining. Is there something?
Yeah, downtown did lose much.
Right. The one building downtown we lost was Pushpa. That's the staff shrine room. But they saved Shitoku and the other downtown buildings and trailers. And the garden and greenhouse, it's actually kind of amazing. The greenhouse was out of the line of the path of the fire. The garden down by Lake Shitoku was very much directly in the line of the fire that moved across the land and that then went in and went up and destroyed Diana. But the firefighters protected our garden. And at least from what we could see, it's still there. Yeah, that was good news. Was anyone hurt? No one was hurt. Everybody was off the land and had been for a number of days from SMC. We were told that there was one close call with the firefighters, but that it worked out fine, apparently. I don't have any details, but just that it didn't end up with any bad results. How many SMC staff are displaced? So there's about 20 staff who live on the land at this point. So much less than a normal SMC staff. And all of them, all of the folks who normally live on land are down the mountain, staying either with Red Cross supplies hotels. The Sangha we've had so many offers of places to stay in the community, and some folks are staying with family or friends. Is there a list of needed items or services? We'll stay in touch about that. There are definitely a few, I think 5 SMC staff members who lost homes and possessions. We're completely committed to ensuring that the randomness of where the fire went won't decide who suffers. That SMC will be helping all of those folks out. So we're just kind of figuring out how that's going to work still. There could be some specific things that are being requested, and we'll notify the community as that becomes clearer. But we need to first look into it, and so there's a little work still to be done there. Which staff have lost their housing to fire? I think that's maybe still something that's a little private. I would need their permission to share their names, so I'm not going to do that at this point. But if they do accept that, then we would be happy to share their names. And there was a question around what animal life was destroyed. I think that's something I don't have sufficient knowledge to understand or to be able to answer in detail. But anything that could move did move. You know, there were parts of SMC that did not burn. But you know, if you talk writ large about flora and fauna at SMC, some things burrow down, some things run, some things can't run. So I don't have a really good way to answer that question, other than to say that given that there were significant parts of SMC that did not burn, that we know that animals would have been able to survive, those that were capable of escaping. Is there a question? What's it say? She might mention
500 pounds.
Oh, this is just a little aside from one of the team members that went up yesterday. We went into the kitchen and stuff that we'd done a quick wipe through, but we collected probably about 500 pounds of food that we were able to give to the food banks in Fort Collins, rather than just toss it. So that felt really good to be able to do that. There's a question around, with this outpouring of support, will SMC become more welcoming to the local community? You know, that's a very powerful question, in that, you know, I think SMC has some work to do. I have some work to do in building stronger, deeper connections with the local community, both up in the mountain and the Front Range in general. So I feel strongly motivated to do that. I recognize you could almost say it's a moral imperative coming out of this to reflect the care from the local community that we've received. So the simple answer is yes, and there's work to do. I believe just this weekend or last weekend, I forget exactly, but we started a program that was being offered for the Larimer County employees. So building on that kind of thing, our donations ongoing this year to the food bank from our garden, those are small steps forward. You know, one of the things that has been striking is the number of neighbors who've emailed us and just being able to respond in a way that starts to build connections, and then how we can invite them to join us, to be a part of us, how we can serve that community as well as everybody else. If there's a more specific aspect of that question, please do email, and you know, I'm happy to return to it, because it's a question that's really significant for me, of how to do that. Which one?
Security, one I've highlighted.
In light of what Michael is saying about security, is it possible to completely lock up the Great Stupa since there's so much value in it? Any attempt to lock up the stupa is people could overcome, you know, I think the fact that there's so much patrolling up there at this point between both the firefighters working on the land and the police presence, that it's not that much of an issue right now. But I'll explore that with the emergency services folks to see what the upside and downside of that would be, you know, a chain at the door, that kind of thing. I think that'll be part of the process of when can we actually get people up there. I'm not even sure when we can next get up there. You know, I'm hoping to be able to do something next week, but I'm definitely aware of the need to keep things safe, and don't want to leave SMC just sort of empty and abandoned. The Hartstupa is fully intact. Yeah, it's fully intact. Around it, it was one of the areas, the fire did burn through the little valley there and took out Dana, which was the closest staff home, and a trailer, maybe two. That part, that area burned, but the Hartstupa itself is intact and undamaged.
How are the neighboring communities doing? The wolf sanctuary?
The wolf sanctuary, so we have a lot of connection with the wolf sanctuary folks. Shelley Coldiron, the ED there. I visited their facilities in Wrist Canyon a couple of times, and their land, so they've bought about 160 acres at the junction of 68C, which is our dirt road, and 74E, which is the paved road that leads from the Forks to Red Feather. So they bought that land right at that junction. They're doing work on the land, but they hadn't moved the wolves and the wolf dogs there yet. So the area in Wrist Canyon is not presently threatened by the fire. So their wolves are there, and that facility is intact. So no damage to any of the wolf sanctuary folks. We know that there were some buildings lost in our area, but I don't know specifics about it. But my understanding is that at this point, they're saying it's just a few, like 2 or 3 buildings, 2 or 3 homes that were lost. Each one, of course, is just tragic. But the vast majority of the houses were not, due to the incredible efforts of the firefighters. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions around volunteering, and you know, I do want to speak to that. We've had volunteer offers of you know, tradespeople, contractors, people with decades and decades of experience at SMC working on things, and it's all incredibly appreciated. And you know we will need that help. That's a given. And so the questions are going to be around when we can get back up there, when we can safely do that work. And then also the kind of taking a step back and using this point in our master planning process and in our approvals from the county, which will be coming up sometime, I believe, in November for us. The county needs to approve our new plan, which is a general approach to, we're going to build stuff here and here in general. So it's not specific buildings or based on building plans and such. So there's still a ton of work to do. And we had already been approaching all of this in a very careful way so that we take into account all of the various stakeholders and include things, you know, Mother Nature as a stakeholder, you know, in what direction, how does the groundwater flow? How would that affect buildings? What is the general hydrological cycle? How do we ensure that we move to, you know, net zero or better? What kind of building materials do we use, and how does one construct on a civic planning level a staff village that nurtures a wholesome community? So there's so many of these kind of details that we've been starting to and we've actually made headway in terms of in a number of these areas in the kinds of questions and getting some of the answers, but there's still a ton of work left to do in this area. And it's, you know, it's something that we've been looking forward to sharing in greater detail with the community. So we will be doing that. And so to, again, bring it back to the volunteers, we need to do some of this deep thinking about what is SMC. And just, you know, with the COVID piece, there's another huge wrinkle that this has to be a dynamic and iterative process. You know, whenever we're able to reopen, set aside the fire just based on COVID, what kind of an economy and society will we be emerging into? And what will the needs be that SMC wants to meet? You know, we have broad strokes awareness of that based on what we've done in the past and how people have been reaching out and expressing what SMC means to them and provides for them. But there's still, you know, will people be able to afford to go to programs at SMC in the ways that they used to? How do we ensure that scholarships programs that we develop are robust and ones that we can sustain? And in what ways do we focus them to reflect the present moment and areas that we want to be able to be more sensitive, more knowledgeable, you know, around issues of race, class, gender. You know, these are all things that this moment in time is more than just calling out. It's demanding our attention. And we want to be able to include all of this in our thinking of how we rebuild so that we can serve the needs that are there. You know, when Kitty introduced this program, she mentioned that she's the SMC's online program manager, and that's a brand new position and a reflection of the importance on an ongoing basis of online programming. And, you know, we also know that there'll be hybrid programs where someone can be teaching. If it's still COVID, for example, it could be teaching to a small group of people that are COVID safely gathering at SMC, and then the program is broadcast internationally. And, you know, that might become a standard aspect of SMC's offerings. To do it well takes a lot of work, a lot of time, staffing, training. So we're doing this piece by piece to ensure that we do it well. But between online programs where it's just someone looking into a camera like this, hybrid programs where it's a mix of live in situ courses with a broadcasting element, and then programs where it really is dependent on the intimacy of being in communion in a physical location on the land. Those three aspects will be part of SMC, I believe, forever now. And so reflecting that as well in terms of how much housing capacity do we have, what do we rebuild and when. Okay. What practices beside Tonglen would you like? So for Tonglen is huge. You know, it's the practice that opens the heart, and at all levels, at every yana level, it's incredibly meaningful practice. Certainly Mahayana and Vajrayana. I think for those that do it, Vajrasattva, we've been told, is a very powerful practice. Magyar Pomra is the protector of SMC, or has a special interest, one might say, in SMC. So I think that's a very powerful practice for SMC's protection and purposes. And then beyond that, it's, you know, what illuminates your heart and your life and feeds a sense of connection with SMC. And that could be anything, you know, absolutely any practice. And it doesn't have to be a formal Buddhist practice or of any of the many religions that have come and held programs at Shambhala Mountain Center. We know that there are people in everything from Vajrayana practices to First Nations practices that are being done for Shambhala Mountain Center. And, you know, it's all just so gratefully received. And the potency of it, I think I can say that there are times where it's palpable for me. I feel it. And I'm really grateful. So there are questions around, we've only got 9 minutes left, so we're going to run out of time to answer all the questions. And again, I'm not avoiding any questions, and there are some questions that really require a level of detailed and measured context that might be better to answer in writing. There's nothing that anyone sent in that isn't going to be addressed. And if you feel it's not being addressed, please feel free to email us and say, hey, I don't think you're paying attention to my question. There's nothing that we're not willing to talk about. So there are questions around the Chakra Samvara program in the spring. And I hope it's clear. It's just, I don't have the information to be able to answer that yet. If we can do it safely, both from a fire after effect and from a COVID perspective, then we would be committed to doing that. Any program that's in person at SMC, we need to work through the COVID protocols very clearly to make sure that both the participants and staff that are working with it, that everyone is safe. So we'll answer that as soon as we can. And there's a question around generally, are we interested in looking at ways to think creatively or outside of the box in regard to COVID-safe programs, for example, having family pods in the dorms? And the answer is yes. If people have ideas, people who know SMC have ideas of, you know, have you thought about this? I'm always open to them. And we have been thinking these things through as well. And there's always room for more suggestions. Yeah, if, for example, we had a program that we had to cancel due to the fire, where I think a group of about 30 plus women were wanting to come up to the land. They said that they wanted to camp, so that was good. And they said that they didn't need to shower over the weekend, so that saved one bottleneck situation. And that they need access to sink and toilet, and so we could use the Padma bathhouse, which is toilets and sinks, and has good airflow, being a wooden building. That's mostly for the summer. And then food could be delivered to them at Sacred Studies. Just bring the hotel pans over and then they take care of it. So there was an example of a situation that's obviously much more in the way of details around that, but where we decided that was safe for COVID, their protocols were safe, so we green-lighted it and we were going to run it, and then the fire had to cancel it. I'm getting a question here.
No, it's just.
Oh, okay, that's not for me. So it's really obvious that a lot of people want sort of hardcore information. Maybe hardcore is the wrong word, just very clear information around questions of finance. And we will do that. You know, we need to have things land first to find out. It's going to take at least a few weeks to know some of the immediate major impacts. And frankly, never having gone through this before, I don't know how long it will take for the insurance side of things to be complete, or even frankly, quite what that means. We have very good advisors on working with that situation. as well as strong competency in-house. So as that becomes clearer, we will definitely share that with folks. Did you say there was a question?
No.
No. Okay. So there was a question, and you know, I don't think I'll be able to do justice to this, but so if you think of SMC as a whole, people think of the 600 acres that stretches from Highway 68C, or sorry, County Road 68C, and Red Feather, and the trailer park and Prajna area, and then goes south over Marple Point, and then further south. So that's about 600 acres. The southern third of that, roughly, is owned by Shambhala USA. Shambhala USA is the legal owner of that land. So that's, if you draw an east-west line, roughly bisecting Marple Point, everything south of that is owned by Shambhala USA. Everything north of that is owned by Shambhala Mountain Center. So that's the buildings, the land, all that kind of thing. And so there are two separate insurance policies, one through Shambhala USA and one through Shambhala Mountain Center. So with SMC's CFO and some other folks at SMC, and with the folks from the Shambhala board and from Shambhala, we're working with both of these carriers and the insurance adjusters so that we coordinate all our efforts and understand how the finances play out from that. So I'm just trying to give a general sketch of that. There's going to be more information shared as to the implications of that and how the finances work out in terms of what we can rebuild. Mitigation, smoke mitigation or abatement, all that kind of thing. Is there a question about that?
Gratitude for firefighters. No, go ahead.
No? Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll just leave that there for now. There's, as I said, there's more information we'll be sharing. There's been a couple of questions around governance at SMC. I think it would be a disservice to try to punch that out in a minute, but we've provided publicly those answers, but we'll do that again. It's also public domain stuff, but I know lots of different ideas and thoughts can be presented, but I just want to give the straightforward, transparent thing that's probably easier to do in writing and then answer questions about it. Is there another question?
Yeah, I mean, that's much. Let's see, if you're already on a monthly donation, how do you up it?
If you're on a monthly donation and you would like to increase it, you can, I believe you can go onto our webpage. You could email development at Shambhala Mountain Center. You could email me. I believe there's a contact information on our webpage as well. Through any of those means, you'd be able to get in touch with our folks. Whitney Trotta, who's our development manager, she'd be able to help you in increasing your donation. It'd be huge. Those monthly donations really stabilize our finances and provide a basis that is so helpful. So thank you for that question. And we'll send out information on that in an update as well.
Other Sangha's doing fundraising.
Sorry?
Other Sangha's doing fundraising.
Which one?
Right over here.
Oh, the question is, or the statement is about other Sanghas that are doing fundraising for SMC. And yes, it's been, and this is maybe where I'll end, is, the outpouring of support and love for SMC has not just been to people that have been to SMC or Shambhala Sangha. You know, that's been incredibly powerful. It's also been incredibly powerful to see how many other communities have been specifically reaching out to their communities to, you know, make powerful commitments to helping us and asking their their sanghas to donate and support. It's been deeply appreciated. So, you know, thank you for all of that. I think I'll stop now. Thank you all so much. We'll keep the updates coming. They won't be daily. You know, I think we're transiting into a more measured time. We will be sending out photographs of the land. If you have questions, please do send them in. Really like to know, was this valuable for you? Was this useful? If it was, and if you'd like to see it again, please let us know. I will definitely do more. You know, I don't want to sort of drown people in information. You know, the attention that we've gotten and the care and love has been so appreciated. And I know people have many other things in life to take care of and to be concerned about. So I don't make assumptions that you're wanting to hear from us every day. So thank you so much on behalf of, you know, myself, of the governing council, the staff, of the land itself. Just thank you so much for all of your help.